Remove the cover plate of the PicoCell by unscrewing the 4 attachment screws. Wire the motor leads into the A, B, C terminals on the PicoCell and connect the motor ground wire to the bottom left grounding screw on the PicoCell. Typically, single-phase or 3-phase motors, yellows is connected to the A terminal, red to the B terminal, and black to the C terminal of the PicoCell. Next is wiring in your PV array from the DC disconnect to the PicoCell. Positive is wired into the terminal labeled PV+, negative is wired into the terminal labeled PV-. Your grounding wire from the grounding rod is wired into the grounding lug on the bottom right of the PicoCell. All solar input terminals are located on the bottom right-hand side of the PicoCell. Configure your dip switch settings to match the motor that the PicoCell will run. The dip switches are found on the left-hand side of the PicoCell next to the motor lead terminals. Once the dip switch settings are configured, flip the toggle switch from off to on. Place the cover plate of the PicoCell on the unit and tighten the 4 attachment screws. You should now be able to power up the unit from switching the DC disconnect from off to on. This is the IMO DC disconnect that is typically used in our systems. Typical systems have the solar PV wired into the IMO DC disconnect. The DC disconnect is then wired into the PicoCell solar terminal. This DC disconnect is cross-pole. Your connection will cross in the DC disconnect and will not come straight through. The wires connected to the top 2 terminals are from the PV array. Negative, which is black in this case, is attached to terminal 1, and positive, which is red in this case, is attached to terminal 3. The wires connected to the bottom 2 terminals are the output from the DC disconnect that will be connected to the PicoCell. Negative, which is black in this case, is attached to terminal 2, and positive, which is red in this case, is attached to terminal 4.